All right, let's dive into something kind of fascinating, but maybe a bit uncomfortable. Relationship red flags. You know, those subtle hints of trouble we often try to ignore.
Exactly. And while ignorance might be bliss sometimes when it comes to relationships, a little knowledge can be a real game changer for building strong and healthy connections.
It's like they say, forewarned is forearmed, right? So
Yeah.
instead of burying our heads in the sand, let's get some insight into how to spot those warning signs before things escalate.
Absolutely. Let's empower ourselves to make informed choices and create those relationships we all dream of.
Awesome. So how about we start with those almost invisible cracks that hint at deeper issues lurking beneath the surface?
Well, one concept I find helpful is micro-betrayals. These are those little actions that on their own might not seem like much, but when you see a pattern, they can signal a growing disconnect, a shift in the relationship.
Micro-betrayals. Interesting term. Can you give us an example?
Imagine you're out with your partner and some friends, and you notice they're flirting a bit more than usual with someone else. Maybe laughing a little too hard at their jokes, holding eye contact a little too long, or even finding ways to be physically close to them.
Okay, I see how that could raise some eyebrows. But wouldn't it depend on the context? I mean, some people are just naturally flirtatious, right?
Yeah.
When does it cross the line?
You're absolutely right. Context is key. It's not about becoming overly suspicious or controlling your partner's every move. It's more about paying attention to changes in their usual behavior. Notice a pattern. Is the flirting excessive? Is there a gut feeling something's off? These are all things to consider.
So it's not just the action itself, but the feeling it creates in you, like a little internal alarm bell going off.
Precisely. And here's the thing. So often, we tend to brush those early warnings aside. We tell ourselves we're overreacting or being silly, maybe even jealous.
Why do you think we do that? Seems strange to ignore something that's obviously bothering us.
Well, for one, facing those tough conversations can be scary. We might be afraid of what we'll find, or maybe we just want to avoid conflict. Easier to just ignore it and hope it'll fix itself.
Yeah, the old out of sight, out of mind approach. But of course, that rarely works in the long run, does it?
Not really. The problem is, these micro-betrayals, if you leave them unaddressed, they can actually snowball into much bigger problems. Imagine tiny cracks in the foundation of a house. Each one might seem insignificant, but over time, they can weaken the entire structure.
That's a great analogy. Ignoring those little red flags is like neglecting to maintain your house. You're bound to run into major problems down the line.
Exactly. And the same applies to relationships. Addressing those small issues early on can prevent a lot of heartache and pain in the future.
So what you're saying is we need to be more in tune with those subtle changes in behavior. We need to have those uncomfortable conversations, even when it's tempting to just look the other way.
Exactly. And I want to stress that these conversations don't have to be aggressive or accusatory. It's about expressing your feelings and observations calmly and openly, truly wanting to understand your partner's perspective.
Right, creating a safe space for open and honest communication, even when the topic is difficult. So, we've talked about micro-betrayals. Are there any other red flags to watch out for?
Absolutely. And one of the biggest ones in any relationship is contempt.
Contempt. Tell me more. What exactly is it, and how does it manifest in a relationship?
Well, contempt goes beyond just disagreement or annoyance. It's this deeper, more harmful negativity that conveys a sense of superiority over your partner. Like you're looking down on them, feeling like their thoughts and feelings are worthless.
That sounds pretty toxic.
Yeah.
How does contempt actually play out in daily interactions?
It can show up in a lot of ways, both verbally and non-verbally. Things like sarcasm, insults, eye-rolling, name-calling, mockery, dismissive gestures. Even something as simple as a sigh can be loaded with contempt. Sometimes it's not what's said, but how it's said. The tone and body language.
It's like those little digs and put-downs that chip away at your partner's self-esteem, creating a toxic environment of disrespect.
Precisely. And here's something pretty alarming. Research shows that couples who show contempt during therapy sessions are significantly more likely to divorce within 6 months.
Wow, seriously? Just from eye-rolling and sarcastic comments, that's a bit unsettling. It seems so small, but it clearly says a lot about the relationship.
Right. Might seem like a minor gesture, but it reflects a deep lack of respect and a simmering resentment that can really eat away at the foundation of a relationship over time.
Okay, starting to understand how serious this is, can you give us a real-life example of how contempt might show up, something our listeners can relate to?
Sure. Imagine a couple at home. One partner spots a beautiful cardinal outside the window and excitedly says, "Honey, look, a cardinal." Now, the other partner has a few ways they can respond.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's hear those options. How could this scenario play out?
Well, there's the openly contemptuous response. Who cares about your stupid bird? Can't you see I'm busy?
Ouch, that's pretty harsh and dismissive. Not exactly the reaction you want when sharing something that made you happy.
Right. And then there's the response that seems positive, but is actually full of contempt. They might sigh dramatically, roll their eyes, and say, "Yeah, that's nice, dear," without even looking up from their phone.
I could see how that would sting even more. It's like they're trying to hide their disdain, but it's still obvious in their tone and body language.
Exactly. It's passive-aggressive and dripping with resentment. Then there's the neutral response. They just ignore the comment, completely, totally absorbed in whatever they're doing.
Okay, that's not great either. It's like shutting your partner out, saying their thoughts and feelings don't matter.
Right. And finally, there's the healthy, engaged response. They put down their phone, look at the bird with genuine interest, and maybe even say something like, "Wow, it's beautiful. We haven't seen one of those around here in a while."
Ah, the ideal scenario. But it really is eye-opening to see how even something as simple as a bird can reveal so much about the dynamics of a relationship, the level of respect or disrespect that's present.
Absolutely. This example leads us to a concept John Gottman, a well-known relationship researcher, calls bids for connection.
Bids for connection. Tell me more.
A bid is any attempt to connect with your partner, whether it's sharing a thought, a feeling, a story, or even just an observation, like in the cardinal example. It's saying, "Hey, I want to connect with you. Are you open to it?"
So in that example, the partner who noticed the bird was making a bid, and the other partner's reaction showed how open they were to connecting.
Exactly. And Gottman's research has found that couples who consistently respond positively to each other's bids, even in small ways, are much more likely to have happy and successful relationships.
Makes sense. So it's not just about avoiding negativity like contempt, but also actively engaging with our partner's attempts to connect, even if it's about something as seemingly insignificant as a bird.
Precisely. And that engagement doesn't have to be grand or over the top. It's about being present, showing genuine interest, and responding in a way that makes your partner feel heard, seen, and valued.
So even if you're not a bird enthusiast, showing interest in something your partner cares about can strengthen the connection and build goodwill.
Exactly. It's about prioritizing their emotional needs and being willing to set aside distractions, even potential resentments, to connect on a deeper level.
That's such an important point. It's easy to get wrapped up in our busy lives and forget to truly tune in to our partner's bids for connection. We might be physically present, but emotionally checked out.
And those moments of disconnection can build up over time and create distance in the relationship. But when we consciously turn towards those bids, we're essentially saying, "You matter to me, I see you, I hear you." And those small gestures of attunement can make a world of difference in building a strong, loving, and resilient connection.
That's beautifully put. It's those everyday moments of connection that weave the fabric of a lasting relationship.
Exactly. And talking about building a lasting relationship, one of the key ingredients is being able to navigate conflict in a healthy and constructive way. And that's something we'll discuss further in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, everyone, because next we'll be unpacking some powerful strategies for turning those inevitable moments of friction into opportunities for growth and a deeper connection.
Welcome back to our deep dive. Before we took a break, we were discussing the importance of recognizing those bids for connection and responding in a way that nurtures the relationship.
Yeah, and we were about to step into the often dreaded territory of conflict. Because, let's face it, disagreements are going to happen no matter how in sync you are with your partner.
Absolutely. Conflict is just part of being in any close relationship. It's how you handle those disagreements that can really make or break the connection.
Instead of seeing conflict as something to avoid at all costs, how can we approach it in a way that actually makes the relationship stronger?
It starts with a change in perspective. Instead of looking at it as a battle that needs to be won, we can reframe it as a chance to understand each other better, to find solutions that work for both partners.
That's a really powerful reframing. Takes the pressure off of being right and puts the focus on finding common ground.
Exactly. And to do that, you need to be willing to listen to each other's perspectives with empathy and respect, even when you disagree.
I can see how that's easier said than done, though. When emotions are running high, it's so easy to get defensive or shut down or even lash out. How do you stay calm and open when you feel like you're being attacked?
It's tough, no doubt, but there are some things that can help. One of the most effective is to just take a break if things are getting too heated.
The classic timeout. Sometimes you just need a minute to cool down before you can think straight. Any suggestions for how to navigate that timeout How do you call for a break without making it seem like you're abandoning the conversation entirely?
That's a great question. The key is to communicate that you need a break in a way that reassures your partner that you're not dismissing their feelings or trying to avoid the conversation. You could say something like, "Hey, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now. Need a few minutes to collect my thoughts. Can we come back to this in a bit?"
I like that. You're setting a clear intention to return to the conversation, letting them know you're committed to working things through.
Exactly. And during that break, it's really important to use the time to regulate your emotions. Take some deep breaths, maybe go for a walk, listen to some music, anything that helps you center yourself and come back to the conversation with a clearer head.
So you've taken a break, you've calmed down, and you're ready to re-engage. How do you approach the conversation again in a productive way?
One of the best tools you have is using I statements.
I statements. I remember learning about those back when I first started exploring personal growth. Can you remind us why they're so effective for conflict resolution?
Sure, I statements let you take responsibility for your own feelings and needs without putting the blame on your partner. So instead of saying, "You always do this," or "You never listen," well, you can try saying, "I feel hurt when," or "I need you to."
Right, so it shifts the focus away from attacking your partner and towards expressing your own experience. Makes it less likely to trigger defensiveness and more likely to open up a real dialogue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you're using I statements, it's also super important to be specific about what's bothering you and what you need from your partner to feel better.
Could you give us an example?
Let's say you're feeling ignored when your partner is constantly checking their phone while you're trying to talk to them. Instead of saying, "You're being so inconsiderate," which is a you statement and
Yeah.
could easily make them defensive, you could try saying, "I feel ignored and hurt when you check your phone while we're talking. I would really appreciate it if we could have some uninterrupted time together."
Ah, I see the difference. The second statement clearly explains your feelings and needs in a way that invites understanding and collaboration, instead of blame and defensiveness.
Exactly. And when you're specific about what you need, it gives your partner a clear path to meet those needs and work towards a positive solution.
So we've got taking breaks, using I statements, being specific about our needs. What else is important for handling conflict in a way that strengthens the relationship instead of hurting it?
One of the biggest shifts is focusing on finding solutions instead of getting stuck on the problem itself.
That makes sense. It's easy to get caught up in blaming each other, holding on to resentment, and rehashing old hurts. But to move forward, you have to shift that energy towards finding a resolution.
Exactly. And to do that, both partners need to be willing to compromise and find solutions that work for both of them.
So it's not about getting everything you want, but finding that middle ground where both people feel heard, respected, and willing to give a little for the good of the relationship.
Precisely. And sometimes that compromise might mean letting go of needing to be right.
Letting go of being right. That can be a tough one, especially when you feel strongly about your position. But I guess it goes back to how we were reframing conflict earlier, right? It's not about winning or losing, it's about finding a way to move forward together.
You got it. The goal of healthy conflict resolution isn't to win the argument, it's about strengthening the relationship. And sometimes that means putting harmony and connection above proving your point.
And that's where empathy and compassion come in, right? When we can see things from our partner's perspective and try to understand where they're coming from, it's easier to find solutions that work for both of us.
Absolutely. Empathy is like a magic key for dissolving conflict. It helps you see the situation from your partner's point of view and understand their feelings, even if you don't necessarily agree with them.
It's about remembering that you're on the same team, even when you're disagreeing.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that conflict resolution is a process, a journey. It's not about being perfect at it. It's about constantly trying to communicate better and finding healthy ways to work through disagreements.
So it's about taking those challenges and seeing them as opportunities to learn and grow, both as individuals and as a couple.
Precisely. When we approach conflict with that mindset, it can actually make the bond stronger. It helps build trust and intimacy because you know you can face those challenges together.
We've covered a lot here. Taking breaks, I statements, being specific about needs, focusing on solutions, and being empathetic. Anything else you'd like to add about healthy conflict resolution?
It's important to remember that even the best relationships take effort and conscious choices. It's not about finding that perfect person or expecting things to always be easy. It's about making the choice to show up every day and build that loving and supportive partnership even when it's hard.
That's a great point. Relationships aren't a destination, they're a journey. And any journey has its bumps along the way. But if we have the right tools and the right mindset, we can handle those challenges and come out even stronger on the other side.
Exactly. And speaking of coming out stronger, one of the key ingredients for a resilient relationship is being able to nurture those little everyday moments of connection and joy. It's about making time for each other, showing appreciation, and remembering to have fun together.
That sounds like a great recipe for a happy and fulfilling relationship. And that's actually where we'll pick up in the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned as we explore the power of positive connection and how it can help you weather any storm. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent a good amount of time talking about the challenges and potential pitfalls in relationships, haven't we? Micro-betrayals, dealing with contempt, navigating those tough conversations. It can get a bit heavy.
Yeah, we've definitely covered some intense territory, but it's all about trying to build stronger and more resilient connections in the end.
Absolutely. And now I'm excited to shift gears a bit and focus on the more positive side of relationships. Because, amidst all those complexities and challenges, we can't forget that relationships are meant to be a source of joy, love, and support too.
I couldn't agree more. We've talked about how to handle the storms. Now let's talk about creating the kind of sunshine that really helps a relationship thrive.
Love that. So where should we start? What are some simple things we can do to bring more joy, connection, and even a little magic into our relationships?
Well, one of the simplest yet most powerful things is just making time for each other, even if it's just a few minutes every day.
I love that. Being intentional about those pockets of connection, right? We might not always have time for a romantic getaway or a fancy date night, but we can always find a few moments to connect with our partner.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything grand. It could be something as simple as having breakfast together, no phones allowed, or taking a walk after dinner, or just cuddling up on the couch and talking about your day.
It's about those small moments of being present together. Sharing experiences, it's what builds a lasting connection, right?
Right. And all those little moments, they really do add up. They create a sense of intimacy, of shared history, that feeling of truly being seen and understood by your partner.
So it's not just about the big romantic gestures, but also those everyday rituals and routines that make you feel connected and comfortable.
Exactly. And they don't have to be complicated or expensive either. Maybe it's making coffee for each other in the morning, or sharing a song you both love, sending a quick text during the day just to say hi, even having a special cuddle time before bed.
Finding those little ways to stay connected throughout the day, reminding each other you're thinking of them.
Exactly. And those small gestures go a long way in keeping that feeling of warmth and affection alive, that feeling of appreciation for each other.
It's like making those little deposits in the relationship's emotional bank account, right? Every act of kindness, every connection, every thoughtful gesture, it all adds up.
That's a great analogy. And speaking of appreciation, another powerful practice is simply making an effort to express gratitude for each other.
Gratitude is such a powerful force in any relationship. It's like a superpower that can totally shift things for the better.
It really is. When we take the time to really notice and acknowledge the good things our partner does, it strengthens the connection and creates a more positive and loving environment.
So instead of getting hung up on what they're doing wrong, we shift our attention to what they're doing right. We start to appreciate their contributions, their efforts, their loving actions, and we tell them how much we value those things.
Exactly. It could be a simple thank you for making dinner, giving them a compliment, telling them how much you appreciate their support. It's acknowledging their positive impact on your life and making sure they know you see it and appreciate it.
And it doesn't always have to be words, right? We can also show our appreciation through our actions.
Absolutely. It could be offering to help with a chore, giving them a back rub, maybe surprising them with a small gift. Those little acts of service really speak volumes.
They really do. It's like saying, I see you, I care about you, and I want to make your life a little bit easier and happier.
Exactly. And it creates this beautiful cycle of giving back. When we feel appreciated, we naturally want to show appreciation in return. It's a win-win.
So we've talked about making time for each other, expressing gratitude, those small acts of service. What else can we do to bring more joy and connection into our relationships?
You know what often gets forgotten? The importance of fun and playfulness. Life can get so serious sometimes. We get caught up in work and responsibilities and worries.
So true. Sometimes we just need a reminder to let loose, be a bit silly, and just enjoy being alive together.
Exactly. When we make time to have fun and laugh together, it lightens things up, helps us connect on a deeper level. It reminds us of why we fell in love in the first place.
So finding those things you both enjoy and actually making time for them. even if it's just a few minutes a day.
Right. It could be playing a game, watching a funny movie, going dancing, maybe trying a new hobby together, or just being goofy and making each other laugh. The key is to find what brings you joy as a couple and make it a priority.
Remembering to be playful, keep things light, even when life gets stressful. Keeping that sense of adventure alive.
Exactly. Because when we can laugh together, it helps us handle the tough times, strengthens our bond, and creates memories that we'll cherish. Building a strong, lasting, and joyful relationship takes effort. It takes conscious choices. It's not always easy, but it's so worth it. When we build a relationship on mutual respect, open communication, healthy conflict resolution, and that commitment to sharing joy, we create a foundation for a love that can really stand the test of time.
That's a beautiful thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the ups and downs of relationships. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and practical tools for building the kind of love you deserve.
And remember, even with all the challenges that come with relationships, love is always worth the effort. So keep those conversations going, keep your hearts open, and never stop nurturing that spark that brought you together in the first place.